How honest are you? Are you an honest person? Think about that. Now, mind you, if you say no, that makes you a dishonest person, right? So give me a round of applause if you are an honest person. If you're an honest person, clap real loud. Okay, good. Now I feel a lot better because, in my career, I use these handcuffs right here to arrest a lot of dishonest people. So I'm in a room with honest people, I feel good. Now, in my career, I specialized in arresting financial crime, people who committed frauds. So what I want you to do in this moment right now is I want you to think in your head, I want you to picture someone who commits financial crimes, white-collar crimes. All right, everybody got a picture in their head? How many of you pictured yourself first? Give me a round of applause if you pictured yourself first. Me and you, we're going to be talking a little bit after this session. Right? Why is it that we never picture ourselves? Because I can tell you from my experience that almost everybody I arrested, whether it be financial crimes or something else, they always said, I never thought I would be in this situation. You see, being ethical is harder than we think. It's because of the way our brain works. And so now what I want to do is I want to take you into one of my cases. It involved a woman named Kathy. Kathy was married. She had a couple children. I think the oldest one was age 6, about the time that I ran across her. She and her husband didn't have college degrees. They were doing their best to survive. They were working these different jobs, trying to give for their children, trying to make a house payment, trying to make a phone payment, just like all of us, right? She's trying to scrape out this career, but she can't get ahead. And then one day, her sister calls her. Her sister and her sister's boyfriend opened up their own mortgage company. And the mortgage company seemed to be very, very successful. And they asked Kathy, would you be willing to come work with us? Because we've grown to such a point now, we need another person. And Kathy looked at the opportunity and said, yes, because I'm going to make more money than I ever made in my life. I'm going to be able to provide for my family, give my children things that I couldn't give them before. Plus, I get to work with my sister. It was about 6 months later. Her sister is on a business trip. The boyfriend comes into Kathy's office and says, hey, I need you to sign this document. He places the paper in front of Kathy. Kathy looks at it and sees it's a document for a bank loan. And she says, what's this for? And he says, we need this money. We need to put this mortgage out there. And I want you to sign this name to the mortgage. Mind you, it wasn't Kathy's name. It was one of their investors. And Kathy immediately realizes that if I sign this, it's a forgery. I would be committing fraud. And so now I want to step out of the story for just 1 second. How many of you, if presented with a document that's going to a bank, how many of you would forge someone's name on that document knowing that it's a federal crime? Clap your hands real loud if you're going to sign that document. Silence. None of you would, right? Well, unfortunately, what the research shows is that there's these little things called the should self. Max Baseman and Anton Brunsel wrote a book called Blind Spots. And in this book, they describe the should self. And that is the situation that you're in right now. No pressure, no stress. So when faced with a decision, you know what you should do, and we say that we're going to do it. But unfortunately, there's this other little thing called the want self. That's the part of you that works in that unconscious brain. And that's when stress comes in, pressure, desire, and it makes you do things that you ordinarily wouldn't do. And what Baseman and Tim Brunsel found in this research, you'll see the quote right there. We tend to make decisions with the want self much more than we do with the should self, even though we know what we should do. So now I've got another question for you. Are you ready? How many of you would outright steal cash from a friend, a family member, a colleague? You see a wallet there. How many of you just reach your hand in, steal all the cash out of it, put it in your pocket? Give me a big round of applause if you're going to do that. I would. Now, how many of you checking your wallets right now? In a certain specific situation, and guess what? I think all of you would join me. What I want you to do is think about a child. Think about your child. If you don't have one yet, think about one. If you don't have one, think of a cousin, a nephew, niece, whatever you got. Imagine them at 2 years old. And unfortunately, this child was born with a genetic disorder. And due to modern medicine, all the child needs is 1 shot per month, and the child lives an ordinary life. So now the child's 7 years old, the child is thriving, everything is wonderful. And so you go in the doctor's office, the child gets the shot, the child runs off, does the things that the child does. You sit back, you talk to the doctor, and the doctor slips you the invoice. Every time you've opened it previously, it's been $100, which you can afford. This time, you open it up, and it's $10,000. You're like, whoa, doc, what's up here? And the doctor explains to you that the company that manufactured the medication sold the rights to another company who then raised the cost of the medicine to $10,000 so that they could recover their acquisition costs, which is perfectly legal in the United States. Now, your child, you have exhausted every asset that you have. You've maxed out all of your credit cards. You've went to friends and family. You've borrowed from them. The doctor has given you 3 extra shots at no cost, but says, I can't keep doing this. You even did a GoFundMe on social media, but now it's the 1st of the month. Your child needs the shot. If your child doesn't get the shot, your child is going to die. You have no money. How many of you are going to steal whatever you can to keep your child alive? Give me a round of applause if you're going to do that. That is an extreme version of the want self, but what it shows is that our desires, our stress, our pressures that we all face every single day are going to affect our decision making. And that's what happened to Kathy. Kathy started thinking about, if I lose this job, because the boyfriend tells her, if you don't sign this, then everybody's going to find out that what we're doing is a fraud, and it's all going to collapse. And so Kathy says, I'm going to sign it just this one time. And she does. But then there's this little thing called the overconfidence bias, and there's this little thing called motivated blindness. Motivated blindness is how our brains get to work and change and alter facts and transforms things and gives us what we want. It works in parallel with the want self, and it works perfectly. It gets you to do things that you'd never do, such as eat ice cream when you're on a diet. I know none of you have ever done that, right? And you tell yourself quickly, it says, it's only a couple calories. I'll do it just this one time, right? But the next night comes, and what do? You eat more. And sure enough, a few weeks later, the boyfriend comes back and he says, I need you to sign this document. I need you to forge this one. Kathy, firm, says, I told you I was only going to do it this one time. And he leans in the doorway. He says, okay, I get it. That's fine. He says, but what's going to happen is this whole business we have, your sister and I, we're both going to go to jail. And the business is going to collapse. And so then somebody's going to be called in, somebody like the FBI, and they're going to analyze everything that happened. They're going to go through each loan document, and guess whose handwriting they're going to find on that one document. Now, Kathy is trapped. And this is where the overconfidence bias starts to come in. We have an innate belief in ourselves that we can overcome things. How difficult is it for you to admit when you make a mistake? How easy is it to just say, you know what, it's going to correct itself, everything's going to be fine. That's exactly what Kathy said. So she signs a second one, a third one, a fourth one. Eventually, she signs almost 50 different documents using a name other than hers. The first time I got to sit down and really talk with Kathy, she was in a prison. She was wearing the orange jumpsuit. She got sentenced to 3.5 years. And what's really interesting about Kathy is that the scheme itself earned $15 million. Kathy got none of that except for her salary. Being ethical is hard because our brains often work against us. We don't realize it's happening. And before you know it, we've succumbed to motivated blindness. We've succumbed to overconfidence bias. Now, if you remember, I believe you were asked a question. Are you an honest person? Why don't we test that? We're going to play a game called Liar's Bingo. It's just like a bingo card that you played before. I'm going to flash up the bingo card right now. And so ask yourself, have you ever done any of these things? And let's see how many of you get bingo. Are you ready? Here we go. I'll give you a little time. Oh, I see in your faces already. I see some of you. Don't worry, I'm retired. It's okay to say it. All right. On the count of 3, what I'd like you to do is if you got a bingo, I want you to yell it out really loud. So are you ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Bingo! If you look at my card, every single one of these boxes is blacked out because I got them all, right? The person we lied to the most is who? Ourselves. Can that be dangerous? Yeah, because Kathy and so many other people that I arrested, they were really good at lying to themselves, saying like, I can fix this. And what happens is, they get further and further down the trap. In fact, I would be willing to bet that a lot of you, when you went through this little bingo card right here, you probably up here in your brain started talking to yourself a little bit. It says, well, yeah, but everybody else does that too. And right there is your first trigger. If you want to be ethical, listen for when you say but. Because that's a sign that your brain is starting to get to work to rationalize it without you even realizing what's happening. So what I want you to do real quick, and don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to share these out loud. I want you to think about a time where you said something you regretted. We've all done it, haven't we? I'm Italian, it's in my nature. And so what I want you to think about is after you said the thing you regretted, what happened up here? All right? And so if you're like me, if I blurt it out, immediately I say, oh, Brett, those should have been inside words, not outside words. And then up here, I construct this little thing and said, I probably shouldn't have said that. And then that magical word but appears. I probably shouldn't have said that, but if they hadn't said this first, then I never would have said that. And what I'm doing is I'm creating that positive self-image. I'm correcting the error I made and making it okay. The same thing happened with Kathy. Says, I'm making an error, I'm doing something unethical, I'm doing something wrong, but we're going to be able to fix it, and no one will know. And the overconfidence bias is difficult. You look at this quote here. Francesca, Gino, and Celia, they found that being overconfident does things to us to make us see decisions not as clearly as we should. A Cornell University professor named Savita Shah, she did a study of people who worked in organizations where conflicts of interest became a part of their job. It's something that they had to avoid. And so in her research, she asked people in these positions, how confident are you in your ability to stay objective and avoid these conflicts of interest? And they rated themselves. And then she tested them. And guess what happened? The people who were the most confident that they could afford or if they could avoid these conflicts of interest were the people who were the most likely to succumb to these incidents. 36 judges were asked one time, are you more objective than your peers? How many said they were? 35 out of 36. And then when they studied their cases, they found that the ones who were most sure of their objectivity were the most biased. And then finally, we have a way of saying things to soften the blow. They're called euphemisms, right? So now tell me, what does this word mean right here? Human capital surplus reduction. People getting fired, right? What about this one? Grease payment, bribe. This one, creative accounting. I heard that one all the time. It's another word for fraud. Undocumented borrowing plan. A teller told me this after she stole $15,000. These are euphemisms. What they do is they allow us to swallow our behaviors and make it okay. And most of the time, you won't even realize it. Your unconscious brain will work in ways that will make you deviate from the ethical path without you consciously realizing what's happened. And before you know it, it's too late. And the handcuffs come out. So what I want to end today with is, I spent 25 years in the FBI trying to put people in jail. I retired in 16. My goal now is to spend the next 25 years of my life trying to keep people out. So if you develop triggers to remind yourself that you are human, you are fallible, things such as motivated blindness, things such as the want self, things such as the overconfidence bias. If you can make yourselves aware of these things, especially when they happen, develop these triggers. As soon as you say the word but, ask yourself why. If you use euphemisms, why am I softening the blow? If you can develop these triggers, then maybe, just maybe, you can be the honest person you perceive yourself to be. Thank you so much.